when did your sort of problems with the kind of drugs begin, as it were?
I suppose I've been in addict now. I've been into drugs like all my life, like you know. But
Well,
heroin,
from like a young teenage age, you mean, sort of thing?
yeah, from probably about 13, 14 onwards.
Yeah.
But like I'd always promised myself I wouldn't do the heroin. Like, do you know what
Everyone
I mean?
always does, though, innit?
Yeah, like you know, I was basically quite late when I started. I was 28 when I started.
That is late. That is late,
like,
yeah.
Like you know, like I say, I'd always promised myself that was the one thing I wouldn't do. But then I ended up in jail over circumstances, like you know what I mean. And
do you want to go into the circumstances, or would you?
No,
okay, that's fine. Okay, yeah, carry on then, mate.
Yeah, but like obviously, like in jail, well, you got to say drugs are life, like
yeah.
Obviously, with not too much to do in that, and I was like having obviously a hard time.
You're gonna have to yeah, come on, mate. You're gonna have to stop that. Right, go on, carry on.
Yeah, right, when I get to, so like, when I was in jail, I was having a bit of tough time with other circumstances, matters, like, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
And drugs just became like an easy option.
Yeah.
Well, I hadn't been working at the time. I had a healthy tax rebate, obviously, whilst I was in jail.
Right, so you had the funds.
Like, do you know what I mean? I had the funds, so I become a lot more than like what they call like a canteen junkie, like, you know?
Yes.
I got myself a full-blown habit before I really knew what habit was about.
Isn't it madness though that you can go to prison and actually develop a habit inside? There's so many drugs in prison that you can almost score easier than on the street.
Look, I don't know what it's like. It's been a while now, touch wood, since I've been away. But like when I first started, like back in the like sort of mid-90s, we was talking, like, do you know what I mean? It was generally quite right.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
I think from what I've heard, it's still the same.
It's just some of the things have changed. I suppose spice is a big thing now. But
I don't know. I don't get the appeal of that bloody spice stuff.
I smoked it once by mistake, and not for me.
Again, I know exactly what you're saying.
My mate was most upset because we was off to school and. I told him I can't be driving like this, and I had to pull over. So like,
Oh yeah, you can't be driving on that spice, bruv.
Like, do you know what I mean?
Try not to name other people, bruv. That's
that was quite enough. But like,
please turn that phone off, bruv. Please, just turn it off while we're doing this, my man, because otherwise, if that's all right with you, mate, please.
Pat, I'll call you back in 10 minutes. I'm busy at the minute, mate. Yeah. Alright, mate. Alright.
Alright, sound, man. Okay, so we're at the point now where you was in prison, you developed your daily habit in prison.
Yeah. It was all basically two-man bang up, and the person that I was banged up with was an avid user anyway, and it just became all too easy.
Yes.
Like, as I said, I was having a few, outer issues anyway. I was losing everything around me, like, I just got home and everything. Losing everything, including like my sort of business at the time. I was self-employed.
Right.
And like, me head really, I was like, I felt like it saved me at the time. Like, do you know what I mean? But none of us really know.
At first, it felt like it was your salvation, as it were. It made you feel better.
I knew prior to that, I was all like. That was one thing I had in my mind to stay away from.
You know what I mean? And that's how it traps you.
I
don't mean sorry to interrupt. It's supposed to be you doing the talking rather than me. But that's how it traps you, isn't it? At first, it feels like it's your saviour, as it were. And you feel so much better when you're taking it. But then, before you know it, you're in a bit of a hellish situation.
I was stumped. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the sort of thing I think with a lot of people don't realise is like, heroin is it's all about the addiction. Like, do you know what I mean? It's habit forming, and like, to be honest, like after all these years, like the gear ain't worth a bolt. Do you know what I mean? Bring back the good old days. But like, but like now I'm just stuck chasing a constant habit. Like, do you know what I mean? Just to make myself feel well.
Exactly.
Like,
That's what it ends up with. It ends up with, as you just put it in a nutshell. You're buying it and doing it just so you're not ill, which is ridiculous,
that's
isn't
it? And it's a spinning circle.
It's like I like to put it like it feels like you're on a hamster wheel, or it's like a fairground ride, right? You get on it and it's like a hamster wheel, and you're loving it at first. You're loving the lights and the show and that. And you feel so much better. But as you go, it starts to get faster and faster. And in the end, you end up running after something, chasing after something. You can't get.
Like the reasons why I started it is a zillion miles away from the reasons why I do it now.
Yes, mate.
When I started it, it's like you say, a bit more like a saviour sort of thing. Yeah, like, you know, especially like when you banged up, you know, as I say, I was losing everything around me, like, you know what I mean? My head was in bits, like, and it was all to an easy option, like, you know, and I didn't realise the trouble I was in really until I got out of jail, you know, basically 9 a year later. Like, you know,
how long did you do with a friend?
That was a 2-year sentence, so I've done half of it.
Oh, right, so
it's like, a year, like, you know, it's just under a year I've been on the gear, because obviously, like, I wasn't on it, like, straight away, but it didn't take long.
Yes, of course.
Like, you know what I mean, it didn't take long. Like, I used to look at my cellmate, like, and even I promised myself about, like, you know, stuff happening. You know, in there it's a screwed up place. Yeah, it's a screwed up place anyway. And like, you know, apart from him looking like he didn't know what time of the day it was, he didn't know what day of the week it was. And like, it was just too easy for me. Yeah, and it needed some of that. Just take it all away in a sense.
That totally makes sense. You know, obviously it's true, but I can see. Totally, you see. Just check that camera's still working.
Yeah, we're still working.
Okay. So you leave prison then, Robbie, Bob, and then obviously you got your habits. So what kind of?
I didn't really realise. As I say, when I got out, I didn't really realise to begin with the trouble that I was in. It was someone else, like, in a sense, mentioned to me, like, do you know what I mean, that I was basically all hanging out and all that, like, do you know what I mean? And, like, you know, then obviously you start, like, you know, bumping into certain people on the street and all that, like, you know, and it just grew from there, like, you know. At first it was, like, do you know what I mean? It done what he said on the box. In a sense, like, do you know what I mean? It took all the boundaries
you didn't get to read the small print, you know, at the bottom, which tells you that.
I don't think none of us do. None of us realise really, like, what addiction is about. Like,
unfortunately, until you're in it, it's too late.
Yeah, that's what I say. Like I think now personally, the gear that we take, and it's been like this for many years, is nowhere near as was, or it certainly don't feel as was.
Yeah, but it's probably because you've been on it as well so long, Rob, that your body's brain is so used to it.
Immune to it,
So exactly.
But I'm still left with the chase.
Exactly, exactly. That's what I was trying to describe earlier. Yeah, the chase, man.
Yeah, I've been on a methadone script for some good years now. 25 years, I suppose, you know, on and off in between, like, a couple of other jail sentences. But, like, apart from that, every time I've come out, because I was doing, you know, a lot of work and all that, like, you know what I mean, I was more about on the meth, like, you know what I mean, again, as a saviour, because if I was screwed up and, like, didn't have no gear for the day, like, you know, if I was ill and clucking, then that snowballs, and I obviously then couldn't work and all that, so it was as more of a safety net, if anything, like, you know what I mean.
I get that entirely.
I mean, as time's gone on, my usage used to be like as much money as I had, like, it all went one direction, like, you know. But like now, even though I'm still a user in that, I'd like to think I'm pretty much on top of, like, you know, as much as it can be on top of things, like, you know. I don't consider myself a huge user. I'm only on 25 millimeters, so like anyone knows, that would speak for itself. If I can't get no gear, 25 mil will hold me. So like that, to anyone in the know would say.
Anyone knows that means that you've got quite a low habit.
Because I was more in the bags like I used to, like, you know what I mean, 25 mil wouldn't scratch the surface. But like, you know, I still seem to be bashing my head against the wall all the time, like, you know. A lot of it is, you know,
it's like you dig yourself a hole and then you suddenly find you're so deep you can't climb out of it, as it were. So you get what I'm trying to say.
And I find, so one thing with the gear and that is you get so dependent on it that it's sort of like, if anything, it enables you to do things, like, you know.
Of course.
You're not up and ready to do things unless you've had a fix.
You can't start your day
It's
until you've had some.
like, if I've got to go out and do something, like, you know what I mean? Generally, I need to have a bag to give me to get up and go. You're comfort,
100.
like, you know.
Otherwise, you're going to end up walking out the door, and a couple of hours later, you're going to feel sick as you know.
Like, I can go out and I could do my meth, and that, like I said, the 25 mil will hold me for the day, like, you know what I mean?
So go into, as much as you want to, as much as you can, go into some of the problems that it's caused you in other areas of your life, if you get what I mean.
Well,
relationships, things like that, family.
What problems don't it cause?
Go on,
a lot of your relationships, if be like, do you know what I mean? Generally in and around, like, you know, you get locked into a sort of tight community. Like, you know, those that do and those that don't. Like, you know, and you're in the group of the do's and everybody else is that don't. So it's hard to blend between the two. Like,
I get
you know what I mean?
It's almost like joining. I can't think of a better word. It's probably not the way, but it's like you're in a family, as it were. You've all got something in common.
That's in a sense. That's what it feels like. You know, nobody's a real friend. It's more of an associate. I'm not saying that's dogging everyone down, because I'm not. But like, you know, you know, you're not what friends like you used to, because you're all. That is a connection. Like, you know, that is what, you know, puts you in.
And the problem is as well, I believe, because it kind of dulls your emotions. A proper friendship becomes sort of impossible anyway, because
it's the last thing you're thinking of.
You haven't got that sort of, like, you know.
It's the last thing you're thinking of, really. Like, you know what I mean? I used to be up out, you know, playing golf and fucking snookering and all them sort of things. And all of them things, they go out the window.
Yes,
like, do you know what I mean? You can have it in your head, like, I might be going to do this Tuesday or whatever, like, you know. But it's not.
It ends up your whole day,
and it's all changed.
And I feel it almost becomes a full-time job, as it were.
It is a full-time job.
You're constantly working either to get the money, or to get the gear, or you're doing the gear, or you're enjoying the gear.
The phone calls, the chasing, the yeses, the no's.
And as you say, everybody you know is doing
that
the same
connection.
thing.
So
that connection. You know, and over the years, it develops. So like you say, you literally have got no other friends who don't use. So you sort of don't have another outlet. Someone who you can go and do golf with.
Not that you don't want other friends, it's just that other people put you in a bracket. Where, like, do you know what I mean?
Of course.
Like, you're downviewed. Like, you know what I mean? And where, like, I look like addiction is something that you can, unfortunately, learn to live with. Like, do you know what I mean? I'd like to say that, like, you know what I mean? That I'm a functioning addict, if that can be the word, like, do you know what I mean? I mean, I still used to work quite happily a while ago, you know, on the gear and all that, like, you know.
I've known you doing jobs, Rob. You know, I've known you, you know.
That's it. I think a big, huge thing that knocked me on the head was all this COVID. Right. Do you know what I mean? And it does it. I sort of don't only it isolated everyone, like, you know. And then, like, you know, I suppose if the world would ever return to what was functional and normal, like, do you know what I mean? It's certain things I've just lost my get out and go, my head's like spinning all over the place, like, you know what I mean? And I can become my own worst enemy. Like, do you know what I mean?
How did it affect your relationship with your family, as it were? Your mum, you know, and stuff like that?
Well, with my mum, I haven't had a relationship with my mum for, like, way back when, like, you know.
Was that over the gear though, Prof?
No. This was before I started the gear. I was obviously doing other drugs in that at the time. But, like, you know, a lot of it was like the acid, the weed, sniffing a bit of coke and all that, like, you know what I mean? But, like, I'd always promised myself, as I say, to stay away from the heroin and all that. But, you know, circumstances be, and like I say, at the time, I started, I felt it was more of a saviour than a thing, and like you was getting into something that you really didn't fully understand. Like, you know, I think it's the same for most of us, that we don't actually know what addiction is about, what 24/7 means. It's day in, day out. It doesn't leave you alone.
And you don't get no days off. There's no holiday.
30 years of it. If it was an employment, you'd be cooking, chopping a pile.
Yes, mate.
Like, you know what I mean? But it's not. Like, you know? Sometimes you feel you need that to be able to function.
And it kind of, I don't mean to be dramatic, but it kind of costs you your soul in a way. If you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the money's the last thing. Sort of thing.
It takes away your kind of like who you really
you're
are.
in a cell. Takes away your inner self.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big loss in life, you know. And one of the worst things is regret. You can look back.
Yeah, you can always, wish you could turn back the years, but it don't work like that.
They're gone.
It don't work like
they're
that.
They're done, man, and that can be a horrible feeling. To feel that regret.
You know what I mean? Well, after a while, I think you lose that feeling. It just becomes the norm. It becomes the norm.
Yes.
Like, do you know what I mean?
It's strange how human beings can sort of adapt to any situation, because I've spoken to homeless people, and they're kind of like, obviously they're enjoying themselves, but, like a guy said to me the other day, he said the tragic thing is I've learned to live with it.
Yeah, and that's what you do.
It's become,
that's what you do. It becomes the norm. That is, the norm, and yet it's a million miles away from what, real normality is.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Your norm and the real norm is miles apart.
Yeah.
Like,
So this question, Rob, is obviously not designed to get you in any trouble, because it can't, because we're talking about things that might have happened or might not have happened, or I don't know, years ago. But often, where you need the money, you find that you've got a few mates who need a bit of gear, and you can get the gear, so you sell them $10 here and there.
In between.
You become what they call a drug dealer. Whereas
you can end up in stump before you really realise what stump is. It could go from just helping a few buddies out. The worst thing is, with it makes murder sound a good choice, because you can have so many degrees of murder, with intent, first degree, second degree, manslaughter, do you know what I mean? So many different degrees and all that, But when it comes to drugs and that, you either just personal user or it's an intent to supply.
Yes.
Now that can, that intent to supply can be as much as me smoking a joint and passing it over to you.
Yes.
And now that makes me, that's an intent to supply.
Yes.
There is no middle ground.
And even if Rob, sorry to interrupt, even if your mate comes up to you and says, "Here's my tenner, can you get me a bag?" And then you do it to, obviously, as a favour. But they class that as supply. When you give him that bag, that's drug dealing in the police's eyes.
In the law's eyes. But do you know what I mean?
But really, you're just helping a friend.
Yeah, you're just you help them, they help you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And the last thing you're thinking of is I'm some big motor dealer and all that, because I've never considered myself that, at all, but there is situations, no names mentioned, where, you do help people out, and said people who don't, help you out. We all get stuck. But as I said, this stuff don't leave you alone. It is literally 24/7, even though it can be 2 minutes in from me cooking up and boom, and I've done the hit, there's 2 minutes of what happens to the other 23 hours and 58 minutes, but it's still all part of it.
Yes, mate.
It really is, because, TikTok, the next day comes and you're back to square one. You always go back to square one.
Very well put, Rob. Very well put there, actually. Very well put there, Bob. So, if you don't mind me asking, going into this, how many years in prison would you say you spent during
I've done
all in all?
I've ended up with 10.5 years worth of sentence.
Whoa.
Over,
well, you've actually done that behind the doors.
28, yeah. The first time I got 2 years in after that, served 1 year. The second one was 5 years parole, so I got out after 30 months, because you had to do, I think it was 2/3 of your sentence then, but parole come at halfway. And then the last one, I mean, it was just a fucking school bag of each. I thought I'd done well at 35 quid, but 3.5 fucking years. No wonder what. No wonder why I called the judge all them things.
Did you ever go to the judge? It's the worst thing you can do, brother.
Yeah, I know that. You know that after, but like at the time it felt good. Like, do you know what I mean? How dare you sit there and you judge me?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? How dare you judge me? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand.
And it's like, you know, being an addict doesn't necessarily make you a bad person.
No, mate.
Like, you know, by any means, like, you know. Like I say, you know me, I've worked many years at some point, like, you know.
Yeah.
But it just catches up with you at some point, like, you know, do you know what I mean? And you are chasing the vicious circle, like, you know, the group comes small and everything, like, you know, it's like I say, it's not so much about friends, it's associates. Like, you know what I mean? You know, said people, because
It's a sad, well, goes without saying, it's a sad way to lead your life, isn't it?
It sure is.
Because you're losing out on the value of having proper friends, and do you remember things that normal people?
Yeah, I think that's what makes it hard. That's what makes it hard now, like, you know, because I'm not going to get up and run away, move to a different area and all that. That's all nuts and that, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, you know, I've just come to accept what I do. I don't judge myself as like a bad person because a bit like that, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I know they say everything's like, you know, it's at the cost to someone, but like, you know,
well, I think it's at the cost of yourself.
That is the main one. It's at the cost of yourself.
That's who you're hurting.
You don't realise what goes on.
Like,
you know, you don't understand what it is. As I say, 2 minutes to cook up and do the hit, and then I've still got 24 hours like of the day left before it starts all over again.
Yeah, man.
Like, you know?
And like, I mean, like when it comes to like girlfriend relationship, as it were, you know, relationships with women, as it were, you know, has it affected that? Would you say?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I've got an older boy now.
Right.
I was with my previous partner, no names mentioned.
Yes.
On and off for 20 years, like, you know.
Oh, right. Okay.
Obviously, that's how my boy come along.
Yes.
But it is, like, you know, she was aware of what I'd done and all that, like, you know, thank God she never ever turned to it, like, you know.
Yeah.
Sniffed a bit of fucking speed here and there. But,
well, that's a rare woman to find that will accept
that will take, that's what I mean. We're not all bad people. We're not all bad people.
No, of course not.
Like, you know what I mean? It's just that, like, you know, we get judged by our lifestyle.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Which kicks you in the teeth and puts you in a spot where it can develop and just snowball, making things like worse. You can never catch up to what we say the norm. What is normal? Nowadays, like, you know, you lose touch of it.
It's a bad thing. I mean, in them 35 years, I think you said it was 35 years.
30 years.
I mean, there must have been situations you've been in, Rob, which have been maybe dangerous or violent, or you know.
I've been to a few scary places going to school, like, you know what I mean? Like, of course, I went up to, I used to go out to Bristol, St Paul's, and like 1 minute you're in a sort of really nice road, all plus shops and everything like that. One might turn, and all of a sudden, like, you know, you're in it's like Beirut. It's like Beirut. Like, you know, all on like one right hand turn.
Yeah, man.
Like, you know.
Yeah, right. And you got to watch your back, fucking.
And it is, it's
literally watch your back, sort of thing.
Like, do you know what I mean? You can lose everything as fast as you gain anything.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
But have you actually had to unfortunately experience violence inflicted on yourself? You know.
I've had a few situations. I won't go too deep into it.
Okay.
But it is all drug related.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Otherwise, them problems wouldn't be there.
Wouldn't occur.
They wouldn't. yeah, it's just, I suppose, a part of, like, you know,
yes.
it's almost like, an accepted, like, not that you want to say accepted risk, but like, I suppose, that's what it comes down to, it's a part of, you know, as quick as it happens, like, you can be in, like, you know, shaky knee land and all that, and then like, you know, that can come and go 10 minutes later, and it's like it never happened, like, you know, once that's out the door.
I thought you was going to turn it off, my man. Come on, bro.
I've really got to go somewhere, Tim, mate.
Yeah, well,
Scott, give me 10 minutes and I'll be walking up though, but alright.
I won't keep you more than a few more minutes, I swear, bro. Let's just finish it off quickly, mate. Yeah, okay? Okay, so look, two more questions I wanted to ask, okay? So, when it comes to relationships with women, do you not find that because of the drugs, they become not proper loving relationships, but kind of codependent, as it were? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
It can be. It can be.
You know, where you
can get.
You can care about the person. Don't get me wrong.
For sure.
But the drugs are
you
always.
wonder whether it'd be there without.
It's almost like a three-way.
Yeah, you wonder whether it'd be there without the gear. So that's where you say, look, you know, it could be codependent just in that alone.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just the people you meet, nothing to do with, like, you know. You can still care for this person, but you, like I say,
it's a love triangle. Because unfortunately,
small.
It's a love triangle. Because unfortunately, you may love the girl, but you also love the drugs.
Yeah, you
so do you get what I'm trying to say? It's already a fucked up.
Look, I'm gonna have to leave now because
come on,
I am Jim.
Alright, mate. Alright, then, listen, I've got to say, we'll end it there, Rob. Thank you for speaking to me.
Yes,
and I'll let you go. I know you've got things to do, but as you said, it's a full-time job, and you've got to do the job.
That's it. If we have to speak another time.
Yes, that's fine, Robbie.
It's lifestyle gets on you.
Yes, I know, Rob. I'll turn the tape off. 2 seconds, my friend. Where do I turn the